Hi, parents. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm very excited for today's event. And for some reason, just like many other times, again, I have trouble seeing your comments. So hopefully it's going to show up very soon. But please let me know where you're calling in from. And yeah, let me know if you can hear us. Actually, that's also very important. And I'm going to look around and see if I can find this. If I can see your, because if I can't see your question, it's going to be difficult for me to address your questions. But anyway, we have an honored guest with us today, and with us today we have Judge Linda Fidnick. She has this very amazing programs that I had the pleasure of listening to one of her presentations recently, and I thought that's a great program because it's really aligned with what we believe in, which is to have family court cases to be child focused and less adversarial. And so her program, which is in Massachusetts, it's called Family Resolution Specialty Court. And so let's talk about that today. Judge Fidnick, thank you so much for being here. And then she's also the president of the AFCC. As you know, that's an association of family and conciliation courts, which is a very important organization that has a lot of family law practitioners as a part of the members. So anyway, before I actually started asking questions, please give me a moment. Let me make sure that this is working, because sometimes it's just give me a problem and doesn't allow me to see if this is actually live. Okay, I think I can see some of the question. I see Brian's from New Hampshire, Rael, hi Lorenzo, thank you from UK, Mike from California. We see Gabriela from California. So I assume that you guys can hear us. Thank you so much. I do have a little bit of problem seeing the questions, but I'm going to try to kind of do this. Mike, thank you so much. Thank you, Carolyn. So we have a lot of people watching. Thank you so much. Okay, great. So Judge Fidnick, so let's talk about this specialty court program that you implemented. How does it work?
So when parents come into the court system to seek a divorce, a modification, or if they're interested in, if they're not married, but they're interested in having the court help them with their child, they can voluntarily sign into the Family Resolution Specialty Court. And it is a court that is that runs in the courthouse, but rather than have a series of very formal meetings with the judge, the family is assigned a team. And the team consists of the person we call the family consultant, who is a mental health professional, who has an expertise in child development and working with families where the parents are separating. And the second person on the team is a mediator, and the third person is an attorney for the child if the parents agree that they want an attorney to represent the child. And then the parents' attorneys, if they have them, they're not required to have attorneys. And the process is essentially a series of meetings among the team members to help the parents come to some sort of an agreement. And it can be a gradual agreement over time, like start one schedule, say, for the children or child, and then maybe change it because it seems like maybe it isn't working. Or it can decide before they come in, they have a schedule that they like, and they just really want to check it out with people whose business this is. And then they meet and they continue to talk, and the mediator helps them generally with financial issues. The family consultant helps them with the parenting schedule and communication. And then by the end of the series of meetings, if they need a judge to make a decision, there'll be court conferences along the way. And then the judge makes a decision, and then they go out and do their lives. But there's a very high value that's placed on helping the parents talk to each other as well as they can, and always keeping the children front and center.
So, from what you are saying, the judge is actually not a part of these meetings at the beginning.
No, I mean, there's usually an introductory court conference where the judge just meets the people and welcomes them. But no, it's really, the goal is to help people get along better, talk to one another, and develop their parenting communication, their parenting skills. If there are any bumps in the road, say a child's having trouble in school, the team would help them figure out how to talk to the teacher, how to make decisions about maybe an individualized education plan. They need help thinking about what activities the child should be involved in. And they're really encouraged at all times. Well, the team models that very respectful communication and very positive communication. And they're really encouraged to do that on their own as much as they can. And then hopefully at the end, they'll have a better relationship with each other and ultimately will benefit their children.
So how is that, in many states, there's a requirement for mediation before they go to a family court case. How is that different than mediation?
Well, it kind of depends on the definition of mediation. Mandatory mediation is kind of, it's almost a contradiction in terms, because mediation was designed to be a voluntary process. And at least in Massachusetts, which is the state that I'm in, we have something called dispute intervention, which is where a family services officer, known as a probation officer, will sit down and talk to the people, but it's not confidential, and they have to do it. And then the officer can report to the judge whether they were successful in resolving it or not. In the family resolution specialty court, because the whole process is voluntary, that mediation process is voluntary, and it's also confidential. So that if they want to try out something in the mediation, an idea, they don't have to worry that at some point in the future it'll come back and they'll say, well, you said you would do this, and now you're going back on your word. So again, really designed to improve communication.
So, okay, so this is a process that is entirely optional, like voluntary, like you said. Does it have the same, when they finally come to some kind of resolution, does it have the same weight as?
Yes, a judgment enters just like it does in any other case, yes. Yes.
So even though it's voluntary and it seemed to go through somewhat a more friendly process, you still, at the end of the day, it's still a court case.
Right, absolutely. And that's really why, that was one of the reasons that we wanted to have it be within the court system, because we wanted people to feel that if they needed the court, it wasn't only going to be a bad thing. It wasn't only going to be to say bad things about the other parent and to be scared, which people are very scared when they come to court. But instead, the court is actually a community resource to help people who can't make these decisions on their own for lots and lots and lots of reasons, very good reasons. They need some help. And so it's within the walls of the court that it takes place. And yes, and at the end of the matter, if say they're getting divorced, they would agree to as much as they could, and the mediator and the family consultant would help them put it in writing, and their own lawyers would. And then if there was anything that was left to be decided that they just couldn't agree on, like maybe the amount of child support to be paid, then if I did that, then I would just add that to it, and that would be the whole judgment.
I see. And so you would involve at the beginning, like you said, in the introduction, and then at the end if needed.
Yeah. And then along the way, sometimes people will need a little guidance that, they've hit a kind of a bumpy place, and they just want some input from the court, or they need a small thing decided between the beginning and the end, just so that they can keep talking. So it doesn't just, because sometimes, you reach a bump, and then if you can't resolve it, then everything falls apart. And it's to make sure that doesn't happen.
So the process is less adversarial because, from what I could see, and like, please tell me why you think the process works. Is one is, I guess, having it seem like a little bit more hand holding for the parents, because there's these.
Yeah, you could call it that, or you could say more resources available for the parents. But yeah, and also because there's an attorney for the child, and that person, that lawyer, takes the perspective of the child. So sometimes parents can understandably be arguing between themselves and about something, about it, maybe a schedule issue, and then the attorney for the child will speak up and say, well, this is what I'd like to say from the child's perspective, that this makes more sense for me, it's less stressful for me. So that's the other thing. It's to kind of always keep them focused on the future and not on the undoubtedly very sad things that have happened in the past. I mean, when people get into a relationship together or get married, they have such high hopes, and it's so positive usually. And then when they get to the point of separation or divorce, it feels like it's a tragedy, like all their hopes have been dashed, all the love that they felt seems to be gone, but they still have a child together who they both love. And they may have a lot of disagreements at that moment about how to do it best. So the idea is for these various people to kind of keep them focused on what's important, and to not, say things that are just hurtful to the other person, but instead move the conversation forward.
So as these people, like the consultant, the people in the team, are they being trained differently than people that normally involve in family court cases?
Well, they have unique roles. The family consultant is a role that is only in the family resolution specialty court. And so the people who are doing it, they're all mental health professionals, and they all have a particular interest or specialty in working with families of divorce, of separation, and with children, and all the subspecialties that go with that. And then the attorney for the children, all attorneys for the children go through some training to know how to interview a child, and the mediators are given a lot of information about the family resolution specialty court process, so that they can be helpful too in kind of, sometimes people can get very stuck in how bad things were leading up to the breakup, and so there's room to express that, but that's not the point of the process. And I think that unfortunately in the adversarial process, a traditional one, it's parent one versus parent two. Parent one feels like they're going to lose, and parent two feels like they're going to lose. And so they're fighting to win. But the point of the family resolution specialty court is there are no winners or losers. There's a family that existed before they came in, and now there's a family that's going to look completely different, but it's still a family.
So that is so important, I think. But you mentioned about the attorney for the child. We've seen many cases that, I mean, it's not that uncommon to have a guardian ad litem, which is an attorney that representing the child.
Yeah, that's a slightly different role in Massachusetts. Guardian ad litem in Massachusetts is more somebody who goes out and interviews, teachers and coaches and other family members, and might do psychological testing, that kind of stuff. The attorney for the child really is just the voice of the child.
Oh, interesting. Thank you. So I think the structure of it is a little bit different, and I think that helped because, like you said, the parents are allowed to still speak up and express their feeling, but there's that sense of safety because you said, it's confidential and they can make changes. At the same time, they have guidance, as in being reminded that let's go forward, let's not focus on the conflict. So I think that Really good. I remember in the presentation, you also talk about the setting. Could we
Yeah,
talk a little bit about that too?
sure.
I thought that also really interesting.
Yeah, that's all part of the point that we don't want people to be afraid when they come into court. That we want them to feel like they're there, that we're there for them, not to make their lives really, really painful and difficult. And so one of the things we do is, instead of my sitting up on the bench, which you can kind of see behind me, that's the bench. We have tables set up in the courtroom, and I sit at the table with the parents, the attorney for the child, the family consultant. All the whole team sits together and we talk, and it gives the parents a chance to speak directly to me, because sometimes if both parents have lawyers, and in the traditional system, the parents don't say a word. It's the lawyers that are speaking for them, and very often, the lawyer will have a sense that they need to say things that will make their client win, and that will therefore hurt the relationship between the parents and drive them farther apart rather than bring them closer so that they can get back to parenting their children together.
Yeah, I thought that was great. So, and by the way, you guys, I do see the question coming in. I see Mike's question, Jennifer, Mike, another Mike, three other Mikes. So thank you. I'm gonna make sure I address those. But yeah, so what she was just talking about, and I've seen the video that she showed, and that was really interesting, because instead of and let me know if you feel this way, is that every time you go to court, for me anyway, and I'm pretty sure for a lot of you, so I'm curious, let me know, when you go to court, you have this anxiety. Doesn't matter what the case is,
Yes.
doesn't matter what the situation, just going to court by itself is such a sense of stressful situation. And yeah, like you said, it's so adversarial in a way that you feel like, yeah, it's about win and lose. There's always, this sense of winner and loser, but you're talking about your child here.
Mm-hmm.
There's no winning. Like, what are you winning? This is your child that you're trying to figure out.
Yeah. And I think that fear is very real and very understandable, because it's normally extremely formal, and there's normally nobody to help the parents talk to one another. It's quite different than that. And so there, we do spend a lot of time, making sure that they feel very educated about what the options are, and heard, because people have a lot to say, and they don't always know what's important and what's not important. So when they, in these team meetings, they're able to really talk about what their fears are, what their hopes are. And we've had a few situations where, people have really asked for help. They've found themselves in a situation where maybe they've been struggling with a substance use disorder. And rather than using that against the parent, which is often true if you're fighting against somebody, instead it becomes more of, okay, so this is a reality for this family, and what is the best way to address it so that the children get the best that they can of both of these parents. And it may mean that one person has to go to a detox and a rehabilitation facility. Well, that won't be held against them. That will be considered a real sacrifice for the benefit of their family, their children. And I think sometimes in the more traditional system, somebody would say, well, you were away for 30 days. You don't love your children. You don't want to. And that's wrong. It's just wrong. Children deserve strong and healthy parents. And if it takes time to get to that, then so be it.
Right. That's wonderful. So now it's you're talking about a lot of these resources. So then there's that concern, and I see the question in the chat room from Mike about how much it costs. And I mean,
it's free. It's free.
It's free. See, that's amazing. And
yes.
I know this from your presentation, and that's amazing. So how does this work? I mean, how do you get the funding to make this work so that it's free for parents?
Yeah, well, it was a struggle, I'll tell you. And I'm happy to tell the story, because I think that in other places, this process, which is, I think it could work for other people as well. So the way that we got it started was, I was inspired when I saw people from Australia who had a system, and they've changed it somewhat, but they had a system very much like this. And I heard them talk about, how much better people felt about going through the court process, the fact that they weren't coming back as often with more problems. And so I thought, well, why don't we try it? Because I think the traditional system is pretty broken when it comes to trying to help families. Yeah, you can make decisions for people, but I'm not sure you help them along the way getting to their child's adulthood. So a number of experienced domestic relations lawyers, divorce lawyers, family lawyers, and I were talking, and they were very enthusiastic about the idea. Talked to some people who typically represented children. They were very enthusiastic about it. Talked to some mental health professionals who see families and children, and they were very enthusiastic about it. And in part, they were, because there's often a real disconnect between legal world and mental health world. And yet, a family is in both worlds, because a child may be in therapy, or the parents may be trying to work things out in parenting counseling. So the worlds need to be able to talk to one another. So they were very interested. And the mediation community, of course, was extremely interested, because that's been their feeling all along. That's why they exist. And then we started to talk to, so we started also to talk to some people in social services agencies, because it's our feeling that if parents can communicate well, and if they run into a problem in their own lives, a health problem, a mental health problem, and they're able to turn to the other parent and say, while I'm struggling with this, could you just kind of take the lead with the children? Fewer children would end up in care. The Department of Children and Families wouldn't need to be involved, because the family would take care of its own. And that was really something that was very important to a lot of people, because the last thing you want is for children to end up in the foster care system. And so we met and we talked about it, and people were so enthusiastic about it after they saw the video of the Australian model that they wanted to just volunteer to do it. So in the beginning, we did it all volunteers, volunteer lawyers, volunteer mental health professionals, volunteer mediators. And but one of the people on our advisory board said, don't do it forever as a volunteer, because it'll just fade away when these volunteers are gone. You need to get funding. So we obviously asked the trial court if they would fund us. And we were just we were like an armadillo in the hen house. They had no idea how to deal with us. They understood that we wanted to be a specialty court. They understood that we wanted to do something different. And fortunately, the chief of chiefs back then had come from the family court, so she understood it, but no funding. But then we asked legislators to come to watch the sessions. We asked the parents were fine with it, watch the process. They were so impressed and moved by it, because, when parents who are afraid and angry are able to step back from that and really just say, what's the best thing we can do for our kids? It's a transformation. And it happens all the time in the family resolution specialty court. So we had legislators come and they were saying, why, you're not funded by the trial court? That doesn't make any sense. So they actually made us a line item in the Massachusetts state budget. Not like money goes to the trial court for this. It was money goes to the family resolution specialty court in this small county in Western Massachusetts. We had enough to run the first year. They did it again the second year, but then the chief legislator sat down with the chief of the trial court and said, this has to be a program from the court, because by then we'd started to get some research. And Marcia Pruitt, who is at the School for Social Work at Smith College, has been studying it. And so there's been entrance surveys and exit surveys and all that. And so, it's not perfect. Some people really don't find it useful, but enough people found it to be extremely beneficial that we then got funded as a specialty court. So now if you come into court and you want to be part of it, and you both parents volunteer, then all of the services are available for free.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. So that you touch on a thing about how some people don't find it useful. Let's
Yeah.
talk about when it doesn't work. And I do see, for example, some of the question about like when you have a sort of a personality disorder, like one or two, both of the parents, have a personality disorder, like narcissistic or borderline, that get them very aggressive, and the need to win and the need to be right and things like that. I would assume.
And that's right. I mean, there are people for whom the idea of like building a consensual conversation and making decisions together, it's too hard for them. They're not able to do it for a lot of different reasons. And so if they can't, then they can always leave the program. It's they only one, I mean, both parents have to decide to come into it, but if one parent says, this is really not working for me, they can go. We haven't had a lot of families for that, but there have been some, and I respect that. It's the other system has been in existence for hundreds of years, and it is what people know. And I think sometimes if people feel like the communication is not two-way, or if there's just, I can just think of so many reasons why it might not feel like it works, then they can go to the other system. I think sometimes people feel protected by their lawyers because they don't speak directly, and I think that sometimes that's more frightening than giving up control, which you kind of have to do if you're going to have your lawyer speak for you. But it's that's why we didn't like get rid of the other system. We just said, look, we want to create an alternative that people can use if it works for them.
Right. And so that's what I see, is that because it's optional, it's a volunteer thing. So it's kind of a self-screening in a way, right? So if you have very aggressive, very adversarial personalities, then they will choose not to be a part of it. Right. So in a way, So I do see Anne's question. What happens in a situation where one parent is very shut down due to a mental health issue? How do you get that person to cooperate?
Well, if a person has a health issue that really keeps them from being able to participate in the conversations that are necessary with the family consultant, with the mediator, with the other parent, then it might not be able to participate in it. I mean, it just might not be for them, which is hard. But I think that that's a person who might actually, as I was saying, might feel better having a lawyer and speak entirely for them, and not feel like they were on the spot to make decisions or to make changes or to be flexible. Sometimes that can be more frightening than the frightening adversarial system. That's why I say it's very individual.
Right. And then the other thing too is that I'm curious because in the normal system, I felt that the system is incentivizing the professional in a wrong way, as in for lawyers, for example, or mental health professional that involve in cases, the longer the case goes, meaning the more adversarial the case goes, the more they're going to get paid, right? Because you get a client, you get more billable hours. So I'm wondering, why would lawyers be incentivized to encourage or agree for their clients to participate in such a program?
Well, there may be some lawyers that are incentivized by money, but I think there are a lot of lawyers who actually are incentivized by happy clients. And so when they work with a client and the client feels like the lawyer guided them through a process that ultimately puts them and their family in a good place, I think that many lawyer would say, I'd take 10 of those over one of the highly contested ones. That was what I was saying in the beginning. The people who were most enthusiastic almost immediately were the experienced lawyers, because I like to think it's a minority of lawyers that really just do it for the money. And family law is not the best place to be if you just want to make a lot of money. I think you could go out and sue corporations and all that, or represent millionaire drug dealers or whatever. So, so you tend to get a lot of people in family law who actually, a lot of them have some mental health backgrounds. Like there's a lot of people who have like law degrees and social work degrees. So I like to think that more lawyers are along that, which is that they're there to help people.
Yeah, that's very nice. Yeah, and it does make sense in the way that you said it. There are lawyers that are incentivized by money, but you do hopefully have a lot of people that truly care about children. That's why they get involved with the field in the first place. And I thought that was interesting that you got a lot of stakeholders involved before the program started. And I think that actually played into the success of the program.
Yeah, and also I really wanted to see if it was just, my great idea that worked fabulously in Australia, or was it something that a lot of people would understand and see the value in? And that was what was really amazing to me, that and I think I even commented, in the beginning, the advisory board went out and raised money before we even got legislative funding, just because I didn't want people to just volunteer their time. And one of the contributors was a group of pediatricians, because they saw the value in parents getting along with one another, because I think that a lot of times, they see parents fighting in the waiting room, or, they get caught sometimes between parents who are really not communicating well.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. So there's a question in the chat room from someone, I can't see it right now, but said, how do we get this program started in Florida? Well, I guess the question would be actually, is this program anywhere else other than where you are?
There's various programs all over the country that I think have some similarities, but my hope is that ultimately all across the country there will be for families this option. It's just such a reasonable option, and it's not that expensive. It sounds like this is all free, but the cost to the whole society of broken down families is so high that if you can do anything along the road to make it a little better, you're saving a lot along the way. And I think that's what a lot of people saw. My suggestion is, you have the film, Petra, the short film and the long film. My suggestion is people should take that film and they should show it to the people who would be the stakeholders. Show it to the family court judges, show it to the legislators if they know them, show it to people who are, guardians ad litem, who are custody evaluators, because I think that, it was just that I happened to go to an AFCC conference and hear the people from Australia talk about their program that I learned about it. So that's it. It's just, it has to be just by word of mouth almost.
Right. So before because this was about, making the court system less adversarial. So the other day, I actually asked my audience about how have court and professional contributed to making the family court process more adversarial. And there was a lot of questions, a lot of inputs into that. And one of the things is about how you mentioned about people will go back to court over and over again. Mm-hmm. And part of it is to do with the court not not enforcing their orders. So you have an order, and then one party will just refuse to like maybe not giving the child over or not whatever, right? And then so it forces the other parent to go back to court to try this to enforce. So how is your process help? And how have you seen it working in terms of people coming back over and over again?
So what you're describing is so a long time ago there was a lot of research about was it better to have, this is really a long time, was it better to have no fault divorces where people were encouraged to reach agreements? Or was it better to make it extremely hard to divorce and make it adversarial and force people to do what the court told them to do? Well, not too surprisingly, human nature being what it is, when people reached an agreement about what they were going to do, how much child support, what the schedule would be, whatever, they were so much more inclined to do it and not to fight it. That if somebody says, you must do this, and they're like, oh yeah, no, I'm not doing that. I don't agree with you. You know, you did this wrong, you did that wrong. You know, I mean, but instead it was, well, you know, I might not have loved this exact schedule, but you know what? There were things that the other parent didn't love about it that you know, that I feel like I felt strongly about. We compromised. This is the schedule. So people tend to do things, and we have such a great example of the money issue. So yes, I mean, there's a whole world out there that, you know, about people not paying child support and enforcement and all that. Well, early on, we had a very, very young couple come in. They had a little baby. The father wasn't, I think he was working or he's only working part-time when they went through the Family Resolution Specialty Court. So then a few months later, one of the staff people saw them sitting in the hallway of the court again, and she was like, oh no, what happened? You know, why are they back in court? What? And so they said, oh, we're so glad to see you. So, and the father said, oh, I want to tell you, my job went to full time and I want to pay more child support. And we didn't know how to do that.
Wow.
Now, I will tell you, in 40 years of doing this work, that was unique. But that's because by going through the process, he understood what the money was for. I think so often it's so hard because people are, you must pay child support. And then there's no communication between the parents. And then maybe, you know, the mother has a new boyfriend and the father's mad. I mean, it's just so, there's so much breakdown of communication. But in that situation, like, he knew the diapers cost more than his child support, just that alone. And so he wanted to change it in order to pay more. And that's the kind of thing that we want. I mean, if you think about it, that's the way it should always be. It shouldn't be that people are disobeying and having to be dragged back into court and, you know, and running away and hiding children and hiding assets. So much of what the Family Resolution Specialty Court is educating people about how important it is for there not to be conflict between the parents, for there to be good lines of communication, for never to put the children, don't catch them in the middle, and to understand how valuable the other parent is. Like there's like, they do such a wonderful job, even like the lawyers who are representing individuals. I have heard them at various times in our meetings, the court conferences, they will say to the other party, you know, you really made a good point a few minutes ago, and I think we ought to think about changing it so it's this, that, or the other thing. And when people are speaking like that, then there's a whole lot less of that terrible situation that I do not ever want to, you know, minimize how terrible the situations are, and they happen. But this is all part of a very, very much bigger hope and plan for those situations to sort of slowly be non-existent if possible, because the culture will no longer be, I win, you lose. I get the kids, you know, I get the money, I get the, you know, none of that, none of it. Just, okay, this is sad, we broke up. How are we going to go forward?
Yeah, I think that is so important. It's like you said, it's a human nature in that if you have a say in something, then it's much easier to commit to that.
Oh, right. It's just that is absolutely human nature. And I 100% understand it. And so it's hard, you know, when you have to order somebody to do something, which of course as a judge you do, and you know, you can see how upset the person is. That, you know, they may feel they haven't had a chance to explain to you every which way that this is wrong. Or they feel like they haven't been able to sort of process how difficult the breakup was. And they're still so angry at the other party that they can't see through that. And that's also human nature, but I think that's a lot of what our team works on with people to help them understand the difference between what is really the right thing for their kids and what might be coming from anger, hurt, betrayal, lots of really natural human emotions when the adult relationship ends.
Right, right. Yeah, I think that's the great thing about your program is that that guidance process, that support system, that helping guiding them through,
Yeah.
giving them a sense of voice. Because like I said earlier about when you go to court, it always feel like you're a victim, no matter what situation, because there's a judge that just seem,
It's a very frightening thing. It is.
yeah,
It's I mean, think about even this is why we changed the setup of the court so we all sit around a table. Think about when you walk into a court, there's usually like a big bar across the middle of the courtroom. The judge is way far away, up high, you know, and there's other people, you're not sure what they're doing in front of the judge. And there's somebody who's saying, stand up, sit down, and it's not a familiar environment. And it's certainly not one that you would even in a million years say, oh, let's try to work on problems with our children in that environment.
right, right.
That's why we're really trying to change it so that people will see that we really are there to help them work out problems with their children.
Yeah, and like you said, and then you don't even know, like, when your lawyer says something, you don't know, like, is that supposed to be good for me? Well, I don't understand.
Right, exactly. Yes. Oh, that's the other thing that's so important. In the Family Resolution Specialty Court, we try to avoid all legalese. We try to just talk like regular people because there's, you know, I think that's the other thing that intimidates people or makes them angry because they feel like, I don't know what everybody's talking about. What is this motion and what is this deposition and what are they talking about? No, we're just having meetings, team meetings, and we're going to try to come up with a schedule and we're going to try to figure out your finances. Very, very, very much. And also we don't say it's mother versus father or father versus mother. It's mother and father. Those are the people and that's their children.
Yeah, language is so important,
It's so
actually.
important.
We
It is so
don't,
important.
yeah, we don't put enough attention to it, but it can be so triggering. And when people going in feeling like there's a winning and losing, they obviously human nature, we want to win. And so then you feel the need to, you know, there's a winner loser, then you want to destroy the other party because yeah, it's
Right. You gotta get worked up to do that. And that's the wrong way to raise a family.
right, because even when the court finish outside of the court system, the family is still fighting. They still
Yes.
suffering.
Yes.
Right.
And, you know, the court system says, okay, well, we're done with you. But one thing also that the family consultant will do is if he or she thinks that it would be helpful after the case is over for the parents to maybe be in co-parenting, do co-parenting work, or if maybe the child could benefit from having a therapist, then the family consultant will help so that they don't just get dropped out of the legal system and that's the end, goodbye. It's more a step down. So we're you know, what could help you continue to work on this? Or, and they also really work on things like, you know, well, it's always true that the unexpected will happen. You know, you think you've got it all down. You have the perfect schedule, you know, you have everything worked out, and then boom, something happens. Somebody loses a job and they get a job in Ohio, or or a child gets very sick, or, you know, there's a new spouse or partner. And so they also really try to help people have the skills to communicate with one another when those unexpected or those new things happen, instead of just do this and be quiet. It's like, here you go, these things will happen and let's talk about it. How do you want to do it? You know, can you talk on the phone? Well, if you can't talk on the phone very well, maybe use our Family Wizard or AppClose or one of the parent communication applications until things settle down and that you're able to talk on the phone again.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So this, I mean, you're the president of the AFCC, and this week, the AFCC and the NCJFCJ released a joint statement on parent-child contact problem. Do you have some comment about that? You wanted to,
Yeah, I can tell you that the folks who worked on it for a very long time with the goal of helping both professionals and families understand that it's recognized, parent-child contact is certainly a recognized problem, not pathologize anybody if possible within it, but instead help people to talk about it in a non-polarizing way. Because, once again, if people can talk to one another, usually you can resolve an issue. And so particularly in cases where maybe a child does not want to go, or one parent is saying the child doesn't want to go, whichever it is, what needs to happen is there needs to be better communication. There needs to be a way to figure out how that child can have a safe and healthy relationship with both parents. It may look very different in both homes, but it's still there because the child will always have those two parents. That will never change. And so I know that I didn't work on it myself, but I know that the two groups worked very hard trying to help, because it is a painful thing when it happens in a family. And there's no easy solutions, but everybody is trying and doing their best.
so I want to ask a question that it might be, and feel free to not address it. I know you have a long, like many years of experience with, before your program, so you see the adversarial process. This term has always been very controversial, which is parental alienation. Where do you recognize that term? Do you see it, or do you?
Well, I would say alienating behaviors. I certainly could, there are certain behaviors, it's the actual term is very controversial, and it, kind of started back a long time ago. And I think that what I really think is that when a situation happens in a family in which a child is not seeing one parent, it is a crisis. It is such a crisis. And I think people have very different reactions to that. And I think there are very, very different causes for it to happen. And so I know that both when I was a lawyer and now as a judge, I try really, really hard to look closely at everything that's going on in the family, that has gone on. And we try whenever possible to kind of assist the family, because lawyers and judges can't do as much as I think people wish we could. And but I think sometimes really skillful mental health professionals can help break down the walls that have arisen in those situations. It's and the situations I've seen, the family situations, the facts leading up to what is a situation where a child is not seeing one or the other parent, they're as different as the families are. That it can come from all different places for all different reasons. And so it's so important to pay really close attention to the details. And so it's hard to make a general statement, other than I think those families make anybody who's doing this work the saddest of all. And constantly struggle with, is there a better way to help this family? Is there a way to figure out? And again, it's that it's how the child can have a safe and healthy relationship with both parents. And I don't know that people can necessarily agree on what that looks like, and that becomes difficult as well. Very, very hard topic, and I'll be retiring in the year, and it certainly won't be solved in my lifetime. But I'm so grateful that people continue to talk about it, continue to work on it. There's research being done all the time, and I feel like it definitely is a work in progress, and hopefully, I won't say that one day there'll be like the cure, because there is no cure, but I hope that there are better tools to understand it, to see early on if it seems to be happening, to recognize it, to give parents tools to to sort of recognize it before it, because sometimes I think by the time people end up in court, it's really at it, like it's kind of like a person going to a doctor after they've had cancer for a while. It's much harder to treat than when it's early on, and you can kind of say, okay, wait, let's figure out what's going on right now and why, and what can we do about it.
Yeah. So I saw Mara comments that it's really comforting to see a judge that present as empathetic like to everyone. She's really appreciating that. I see John, bring up the question about equal parenting time. I don't know what is the law in your state regarding is there
Right.
equal shared parenting time in your
Yeah,
state?
no, that's a good question. In Massachusetts, we have, so if you're married to one another and you get divorced, there's a presumption of shared legal custody. There's no presumption about parenting time. That's done case by case. And it's it's I know that there's been a lot historically and presently, a lot of work on trying to create an equal parenting presumption for parenting time. And I understand why, because no one should go into a divorce feeling like the children are going to be taken from me. That should not be how they feel about it. I don't know that making that a given is always going to work, because sometimes it just doesn't, like on the ground, like people get along. Like I always think of it this way, like say in a military family, if say the mother is in the military and she goes off on deployment for 9 months and then she comes back, how do you can't really have a 50-50 schedule. You've got to work with that. And that's an individual situation. And of course, we see a lot of military families. And so we have to think about that. And one of the things that I've always been impressed by is I see this really most frequently in working class families, where before the divorce, one parent will work first shift and the other parent will work third shift. That's so that the children are never in any third party's care. They have devoted themselves to that, which I so admire. And then when they get divorced, maybe they can't keep that up, but they come in and maybe they want to both be on days, which is understandable because working third shift is so difficult. But then we have to figure out how far away they're going to live from one another and where the child's school is. So I feel like they come in with, and when we look at it and say, of course we want to figure out a way for these parents to be equally involved in this child's life. But then we have to look at the realities of it and remember that they both had a value of not having other caregivers. So how do we figure out a schedule for the child that the child is with either parent the most? And that might mean that the child's with one parent more than the other, only because their work schedules, distance to work, distance to school, it just works out. So I always say to people, I really want you to help me come up with a functional schedule for your child. I don't really want necessarily to say, well, it's 82% or 68% or this or that. I really want to say, okay, Monday morning, where is Johnny? Where is he going to go to school? And then at the end of the school day, who's going to pick him up? And does he go to after school care? And if he goes to after school care, who's going to pick him up? Who's going to be there? Who can take off of work if he has a sick day or a school vacation? And then what about Tuesday? And what about if one parent has to work overtime? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about every single day in that child's life. And then we'll come up with a schedule together. And I think that that's really co-parenting in my mind. That's 50-50 parenting, where it's not about hours in the day and night, but it's really about together, we're going to raise this child as close as we can to being available as much as possible. So that's my philosophy. And I think it's the philosophy of many judges where there isn't a 50-50 time presumption.
Yeah.
But I never see one parent as superior to the other. It's just a matter of what works for the child.
Right. So I see quite a few more things. I know that we're about to be out of time. But I see a few questions about the mental health professionals involved in the cases, especially when there are, parental alienating behaviors. Have you seen cases with parental alienating behaviors, and how do you handle those cases, and what type of mental health?
I mean, I see cases where a child refuses to see one parent. I mean, that definitely happens. And, as I was saying before, what's so difficult is that by the time that they get to court, they're usually very hardened in their positions. And sadly, the child is often the most hardened in the position. So, my hope, my wish for society is that if during the course of the marriage, because I think when the marriage is breaking down, that kind of thing starts to happen, that's when the parents together can figure out how to go talk to a mental health professional to help them parent better, so that they're not pulling the child between the two of them. And then having the child get the support of being a child whose parents are fighting with one another, having a neutral third party to talk to, because so many kids say, I just don't want to talk to either mom or dad about this. I need to talk to somebody else because my head's going to explode because they're fighting all the time. So, I think that a mental health professional can be helpful. But it's a very specialized role, and I'm not sure every single mental health professional could recognize the problem early on and know what tools to use to help people avoid it getting worse and worse. But the more people are educated, and the more they're trained, and the more they're aware of it, I think the better. And in a perfect world, there would never be any kind of alienating behaviors. Some parents are safer than others with their children, but a parent can have a relationship with a child, even if it's, supervised, even if it's, by video conference. I mean, if the parent is unable to control behaviors that are harmful to the child, or there's such a danger, we have to assess that and protect the child, but we don't need to destroy the parent in the process. It really is, but it's hard, because I think when a parent feels one down, I think they understandably become very angry, and they're very afraid that they won't see their child. And I just, as I said, they're the saddest cases.
Yeah, I think the latest statement, like the joint statement that we just talked about from AFCC and the NCJ, FCJ, was I really actually appreciate that very much, and my audience as well, because it's actually encourage, like you said, not labeling, and recognize that there are many factors into the problem, but also encouraging all family law practitioners to get more training, ongoing training, to recognize this.
Recognize it as early as possible, so that if there's interventions that might help, that they're there. Yeah.
Right.
And sometimes I think that you have to call it to a parent's attention that they're behaving in a certain way. They may be so justifiably or unjustifiably angry at the other parent. And they feel a lot of rage, and they feel very helpful. So then they drag the child into it. And that's really what needs to stop. That needs to stop early. But similarly, I think a parent may have a very genuine fear that the other parent's going to harm the child because of their experience. And then if we can get to the bottom of it, find out what is really going on in this family, then we can help them. Because I do believe that every family can be helped to some extent. Is it perfect system? No, it's not a perfect system. But are we trying every day, trying our very best? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to have hopefully we can get your program implemented into more states, like more widely.
I hope so too. I hope so too.
Yeah.
And and the people, just for the audience, I want you to know that the people who are involved in our court are so committed to it that they will also do Zoom meetings. Like if you have a mental health professional in, say, Florida, somebody asked, who who might be open to talking to one of our family consultants, they will definitely talk to them, because I think people might wonder, well, it seems very unknown and strange, but I think they can help them feel more comfortable in accepting it. Even though it's a new process, it's actually something that I think that probably a lot of people sort of gravitate to because they want to help families.
Right. Yeah. And I'm really grateful for you to agree to meet with some legislators. So we're setting up a meeting for her because we wanted this program to be implemented in other states as well.
That would be great.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to that. I think that, like you said, it would help all the cases. You will have situation where people are very really wanting to win. They have that personality. There's a situation where it just won't work at all, but it will help a lot of cases because, like you said, the process, the environment, the communication, the support, the early intervention, all of that, I think can really prevent a lot of long-term problem. I don't know if you know, but I actually grew up as a child of alienation, and I never get a chance to see my father. And I'm actually a chair of an organization that consists entirely of the adult children of alienation. So in my situation, my father was not at all violent. There was never any allegation of violence. My mother just wanted to keep me away from him. And so, there are situations like that, but there's also a situation I do know where, one parent is is unsafe because they're violent or whatever, substance abuse or things like that could cause, expose the child to dangers, then there's also a situation where clearly you need to, definitely you need solution for all type of situation, and not one size not going to fit all. I definitely agree.
Definitely not. Every family is unique. And it's so important to recognize that, and then to get them whatever the resources are for them specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so I'm curious, so with the statement, because one of the things that I've noticed is there's a lot of misconception when it comes to parent-child contact problems, is a lot of people will automatically assume something, like you said, either one way or another. And that's also said in the statement. So with that statement, and with the AFCC and the NCJ, FCJ, a really powerful organization, and the recommendation is for family law and family court practitioners to participate in ongoing training. What is the weight of that statement? Like, how is that going to be implemented, do you know?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, in Massachusetts, we are trained in the issue of alienating behaviors, partly because actually I'm in the education committee and we brought in a program that had run at AFCC about it. But it's I think that you're right. It's two very important organizations in the field, in the greater field. So it's judges, lawyers, mental health professionals, mediators, court people who work in the courts. And I feel like it's like anytime there's sunshine in a dark place, it's a good thing. And I think that parental alienation is a dark place. I think that, it's a very painful situation. People have very strong feelings about it. And so the more we know about it, the more we understand it, the more that we can help people who are in those situations, the better it's going to be for everybody. And so I think that more education for the professionals is just fantastic. It is, you know, it's, nobody should have any kind of stereotypical or, you know, polarized beliefs about it, who's a professional in the field. They should be able to see the family clearly, recognize it, and then help them.
Thank you so much. I don't want to hold you much longer. I know that
It's my pleasure, Petra, and I thank you, because I think that if people can, I mean, I feel like it's a very grassroots thing, has to come from the people who are the citizens who go to the court. They have to be willing to work with, to say to people, this is what we need, this is what we're asking for, because I think that legislators, like mental health professionals, lawyers, the more they hear that and the more positive reinforcement these programs get, the more likely they're going to spread. So I hope it works, hope it helps.
Thank you. Yeah, I do see a comment here. Someone said that we could benefit from Judge Fidnick's expertise in South Dakota. We actually interviewing a legislator in South Dakota next week, and a legislator in Pennsylvania the week after. And Judge Fidnick, and also she also mentioned about her and also her team. They are quite open to talking to legislators.
Absolutely.
And
yes.
And all the people that working in the family court system to help this implemented in other states. So for sure, yeah. Thank you so much. And parents, please feel free to post more comments. If there's some critical things and I see repeating questions, I will send to her for follow-up questions. And I may find other people to help address your questions. So feel free to post, and please help us share this so that more people see this. We definitely want this program to be implemented into more widely. I see a lot of thank you in the chat room. We got Lisa, we got I couldn't even say their name, but yeah, there's a lot of people really appreciating you, and I am very grateful for this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking. And to everyone there, I wish you the very, very, very best. It's if you've gone through a divorce, or if you're about to, or separation, it is such a difficult time, and know that there are judges, more than just me, who really care and want to do the right thing for you. So the best of luck to you. All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much.